Hey everyone, ready to decode another phone with us? Today we're doing a deep dive into the Samsung Galaxy A52 5G.
Always exciting to see what Samsung's been up to.
Right. So let's break down all those specs and figure out what this phone is really all about. I gotta say, the names of the color options kind of cracked me up.
Oh yeah, what do they have this time?
Get this. Awesome violet, awesome blue,
Huh?
awesome black, and awesome white. Like, come on, Samsung, you're just trying to make us smile.
Well, they've definitely got our attention. But hey, a phone's got to be more than just a cool name, right? What about the screen? What are we working with here?
All right, so spec sheet says 6.5-inch full HD plus Super AMOLED display. I think that means it's pretty darn good.
Oh, it is?
If
It
you-
means you're getting vibrant colors, deep blacks, and it's even great outdoors. Super AMOLED is known for its energy efficiency, too.
Sweet, but one thing I never quite get is this whole refresh rate thing. This one boasts 90 hertz. Is that a big deal?
It depends. If you're coming from an older phone, that 90 hertz will feel like a huge upgrade. Everything feels smoother, like scrolling and animations. It's
Okay.
especially noticeable when you're gaming.
So it's not just some marketing hype.
No, not at all. It genuinely makes using the phone more enjoyable,
Yeah.
especially if you're on it a lot. And to handle all this smooth action and everything else, we've got the Qualcomm Snapdragon 750G processor running the show.
Okay, so break it down for me. Can this thing keep up with, like, serious multitaskers? And what about gaming? Can it handle those graphics-heavy games?
I'd say this processor strikes a nice balance. It can definitely handle demanding tasks, no problem. Multitasking, gaming, you're good. And of course, got to mention it's 5G enabled.
Oh, yeah, 5G. That's the future, right?
Yeah.
But, I mean, downloading a movie in seconds sounds cool and all, but what does 5G actually mean for, like, the average person using this phone day to day?
Well, think about it. Streaming, video calls, all that stuff will be so much smoother and more reliable with 5G. No more buffering, no more choppy calls.
Okay, yeah, I see how that would be a game changer. All right, now let's talk cameras. We got to talk cameras. This A52 5G has a quad camera setup on the back. What's the deal? Is it all hype, or is it actually as good as they claim?
Well, the main camera is 64 megapixels, so yeah, you can expect some pretty detailed photos, especially in good lighting.
But how does it stack up against the competition? So many phones have crazy megapixel counts these days, you know? What makes this camera system stand out?
One thing is its versatility. You've got a 12 megapixel ultra-wide lens, perfect for those panoramic shots, landscapes, or big group photos. And then there's a 5 megapixel macro lens.
Oh, I love macro photography. You can capture so much detail.
Right. And for those portrait shots where you want that blurred background, they've included a 5 megapixel depth sensor. For the selfie lovers out there, there's a 32 megapixel front-facing camera.
Okay, so they pretty much covered all the bases. This is starting to sound like a pretty impressive phone, but let's be practical. How's the battery life? With all these features, can we actually use this thing without being tethered to a charger all day?
So it has a 4,500 mAh battery. That's pretty decent. It should easily get you through a full day, maybe even more, depending on your usage. And if you do need to charge, it supports fast charging.
All right, that's good to know. But what about the software? What's the experience like using this phone?
It runs Android 11 with Samsung's One UI on top. And One UI has been getting a lot of praise for its, clean design and ease of use.
I've heard it's pretty customizable too, right? Can we talk about some of the standout features of One UI? I'm always curious about these little software tweaks.
Sure, there's dark mode, great for nighttime use. And if you often use your phone with one hand, they have one-handed mode. Plus, always on display, so you can quickly check the time and notifications without unlocking your phone.
Ooh, I love always on display. Such a handy feature.
It is. And you know what else is handy? It still has a headphone jack. Not many phones offer that anymore.
I know, right? Sometimes you just want to plug in your headphones and not worry about Bluetooth.
Exactly. And for security, you've got both a fingerprint sensor and face recognition to unlock your phone.
Choices are always good. But, something that's really important to me is durability. What's the story with this one? Can it handle a little bit of rough handling, or do I need to treat it like a delicate flower?
Well, the A52 5G has an IP67 rating. That means it can handle being submerged in up to a meter of water for about 30 minutes.
Okay, so maybe not indestructible, but definitely able to survive the real world. That's reassuring. Now, what about storage options? How much space do we get to play with on this thing?
There are two options. 6 GBs of RAM with 128 GBs of storage, or 8 GBs of RAM with 256 GBs of storage.
So you can choose depending on how much you hoard photos and videos and apps.
Exactly. And if you need even more space, you can always pop in a micro SD card.
Always good to have options. We've talked about the display, the performance, the camera, battery life, software, even durability. I feel like we barely scratched the surface, though. What else can you tell us about the A52 5G that might surprise our listeners?
We talked about that Super AMOLED display, but I think it's worth emphasizing just how visually appealing it makes everything. And it's not just about smooth scrolling, it's about everything looking and feeling more natural and fluid.
Yeah, like the difference between watching a regular video and then switching to HD.
Exactly. Oh, I almost forgot. It has stereo speakers.
Whoa, really? So we're not stuck with that tiny single speaker sound.
Nope. You get good sound quality and volume whether you're watching videos, listening to music, or gaming. It even has Dolby Atmos support for a more immersive audio experience.
Dolby Atmos, huh? I'm not really sure what that is, but it sounds fancy.
It basically makes the audio sound more three-dimensional, like you're actually in the scene.
That's pretty cool. So while we focused on 5G, just to clarify, the A52 5G also works with 4G LTE and 3G networks, right?
That's right. So even if you're not in a 5G area yet, you'll still be able to use the phone without any issues.
That's a good point. Not everyone has access to 5G just yet. All right, so we've got a phone with a great display, powerful processor, versatile camera, solid battery life, user-friendly software, and a bunch of other cool features. And it comes in all those fun, awesome colors. Feels like Samsung's trying to remind us that choosing a phone should be, fun.
I think that's a great point. Your phone is such a personal device. It should reflect your personality and style.
Absolutely. But with all these great features, there must be some trade-offs, right? No phone is perfect.
You're right. There are always compromises.
Mm-hmm.
In the next part, we'll take a look at some of the potential downsides of the A52 5G, so stay tuned.
Okay, so we've talked up the A52 5G quite a bit, but now it's time for a reality check. Every phone has its quirks. What about this phone might make someone think twice before buying it?
That's a good point. We should always look at the whole picture.
Mm-hmm.
For example, the Snapdragon 750G. It's a solid processor, no doubt, but it's not the most powerful one out there. If you compare it to like the top-tier chips and flagship phones, you might notice a difference.
So someone who's really serious about, say, mobile gaming, or who needs a phone that can handle really demanding tasks, they might want to consider something else.
It really depends on what they need the phone to do.
Yeah.
For most games and everyday tasks, the 750G is more than enough. But yeah, if you're constantly pushing the phone to its limits, there might be better options.
Makes sense. Now, we talked about the camera system earlier. It sounds pretty versatile, but are there any areas where it falls short, like any weaknesses we should be aware of?
Well, gotta remember, this is still a mid-range phone. So you're comparing it to the camera systems on those high-end flagships. You might notice a difference in low-light performance.
So if someone's really into night photography or taking pictures in dim lighting, this might not be the ideal choice.
Right. And another thing. Some people find that the photos from the 64-megapixel camera can sometimes look a bit over-processed, especially in certain lighting.
Yeah, I get that. It's tough to find that balance between super sharp details and a natural look.
Definitely. Oh, and another thing to consider is the size. The A52 5G is, well, it's not exactly a small phone, so if someone prefers a more compact phone, this might not be the best fit.
I hear you. Some people don't want to feel like they're carrying a mini tablet around in their pocket. Anything else that might make potential buyers hesitate?
Let's see. Well, the 90 hertz refresh rate is great, don't get me wrong, but some of those flagship phones are pushing even further with like 120 hertz or even 144 hertz.
So for people who really prioritize that ultra-smooth scrolling and animation, they might be better off looking elsewhere.
Possibly. But it's important to keep in mind that a higher refresh rate also uses up more battery.
That's a trade-off, right? Smooth visuals for potentially shorter battery life.
Exactly. Gotta weigh those pros and cons. Speaking of battery, while the A52 5G has a pretty decent battery, some users have reported that, under heavy usage, especially with 5G turned on, the battery can drain faster than expected.
Yeah, that makes sense. 5G is super fast, but it can be a bit of a battery hog.
It can. If you're constantly streaming or downloading large files over 5G, you'll probably notice a difference in battery life compared to using Wi-Fi or 4G.
Gotcha. Okay, earlier we talked about One UI and how user-friendly it is. But are there any potential downsides to using it? Anything that might annoy some users?
For the most part, One UI is well designed and easy to use. But I have to admit, it does come with a bit of bloatware. Those pre-installed apps that you probably won't ever use?
Bloatware. The digital equivalent of junk drawers, right?
Exactly. And while you can usually disable or even uninstall some of those apps, it can be a bit of a pain.
Right. Okay, so we've talked about the processor, camera, size, battery, software. Anything else about this phone that we haven't covered yet? Any other potential downsides?
Oh, right, one more thing. The A52 5G doesn't have wireless charging. So if you're used to the convenience of just setting your phone on a charging pad, that's something to keep in mind.
Ah, that's a good point. Wireless charging is definitely a nice feature, though I know it's not a deal breaker for everyone. So, having explored both the good and the not so good aspects of the A52 5G, what's the final verdict?
Overall, I'd say the A52 5G offers a lot of value for its price. You're getting a lot of great features like that awesome display, the capable processor, the versatile camera system, and the long-lasting battery. But yeah, you got to be realistic about its limitations, especially if you have like very specific needs.
It's all about finding that balance, right? Weighing the pros and cons and figuring out if this particular phone aligns with your priorities and, of course, your budget.
Exactly. If you're not necessarily chasing the absolute bleeding edge specs and you're looking for a premium experience without the premium price tag, then yeah, the A52 5G is definitely worth considering.
I like that perspective. It's about finding the right tool for the job. And tech is constantly changing, so what's considered top of line today might be mid range tomorrow.
It's so true. And that's what keeps things interesting. There's always something new to look forward to. While we're on the topic, there are some really interesting trends happening in the smartphone world right now. For example, sustainability is becoming a much bigger focus.
Oh, that's great to hear. It feels like for a while it was all about just having the newest, shiniest gadget without much thought for the environmental impact.
I know, right? But now we're seeing more and more manufacturers using recycled materials and making their phones more repairable, which helps to reduce e-waste.
That's fantastic. I love seeing the tech industry step up and take responsibility. What other trends have caught your eye lately?
Well, foldable phones are definitely getting a lot of buzz. Imagine having a phone that can unfold into a tablet-sized screen. Pretty cool, right?
It is, but I still kind of think of foldable phones as like a novelty. Do you think they'll ever become, mainstream?
They're definitely still in the early stages, and the price is a major barrier for a lot of people. But as the technology improves and the cost comes down, I think we'll definitely see more people using foldable phones in the future.
It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. And speaking of cool tech, we can't forget about smartphone cameras. It seems like every new phone has even more megapixels and crazy camera features. What are some of the things that have you excited in the world of smartphone photography these days?
Oh man, computational photography is getting really advanced. Things like AI-powered scene recognition. The camera can actually figure out what it's looking at and automatically adjust the settings to get the best shot.
Wow, that's amazing. And what about low light performance? That's always been a bit of a struggle for smartphone cameras.
It's getting way better. You can actually capture some really impressive photos in low light these days. And of course, 5G. We talked about its benefits earlier, but is it really living up to the hype? 5G is still being rolled out in a lot of places, but yeah, it's making a difference. We're seeing faster speeds, smoother streaming, and lower latency, which is awesome for things like online gaming.
So 5G is here to stay and it's only going to get better. But for now, let's bring it back to the Samsung Galaxy A52 5G. If you had to sum up this phone in just 3 words, what would they be?
3 words. Let's see. I'd say versatile, affordable, capable.
I like it. 3 words that really capture the essence of this phone. It's a device that can handle a lot of different things without breaking the bank. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what are your final thoughts for our listeners?
What I find really interesting about the A52 5G is that it shows how mid-range phones are becoming more and more powerful. The lines between mid-range and flagship are blurring, and that's great news for consumers.
Absolutely. It means more choices, more competition, and more chances to find a phone that's perfect for you without spending a fortune.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So for everyone listening, remember, do your research, compare different phones, and most importantly, choose a phone that makes you happy, a phone that fits your life and your style.
Beautifully said. And remember, technology is always evolving. There's always something new to learn and explore. Don't be afraid to dive deep into those topics that interest you. All right, so we've really explored the Samsung Galaxy A52 5G. From its awesome color options to its potential downsides, I think we've covered it all.
Yeah, I think anyone listening could walk into a phone store now and actually know what to ask.
Exactly. But we've kind of avoided the big question, haven't we? Is this the right phone for now, listening right now?
Well, that's a tough one. I can't say yes or no for everyone.
Oh.
Everyone has different needs and priorities when it comes to their phone.
Right. It's not just about looking at the spec sheet. It's about how a phone fits into your life.
Exactly. But I can say this. If you're looking for a phone that's, not crazy expensive, but still give you a really great experience, the A52 5G should be on your list. That display, the processing power, the cameras, the battery, it's a pretty solid package.
It really is. But we did talk about some compromises, right? If you're like super serious about mobile gaming or need the absolute best camera in low light, you might want to look at something a little more high end.
Yeah, that's true. But don't forget about those smaller details that can make a big difference too,
Yeah.
like the headphone jack
Yeah.
or the IP67 rating so you don't have to worry about spills, even those fun color choices, right? Those little things can add up.
It's about finding a phone that you actually enjoy using, not just one that checks all the boxes.
Exactly. So as you're deciding, think about what's really important to you. What are your non-negotiables? What are you willing to compromise on?
We've given you the info, now it's about applying it to your own needs.
And remember, technology is always changing. What's considered top of the line today is going to be different in a year or even sooner.
It's crazy how fast things move. That's what makes it so exciting, though, right? There's always something new coming out.
Totally. So to wrap up our deep dive into the Samsung Galaxy A52 5G, I hope this episode has encouraged you to think more about your tech choices. It's not about having the newest gadget. It's about choosing devices that make your life better, not more complicated.
Well said. And on that note, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive. We hope you found it helpful and maybe even a little inspiring.
Remember, stay curious, keep exploring, and never stop learning. There's so much to discover in the world of tech.
And who knows, maybe our next deep dive will be about foldable phones or AI cameras or even the metaverse. The possibilities are endless. Until next time, keep exploring.